Greetings and welcome to the latest garage update. So in this garage update I do have a couple of things to go over, but I'm going to start off talking about exhaust tips, specifically issues with the Mountune exhaust setup. And then afterwards I will move on to talk about this stuff here, these items. You can see that I have been working on them. I will go over what they are for, and why. They are interior mods and they are going to be very, very cool. But yes, as I say, first off I'm going to talk about the Mountune exhaust. Okay, over here on the bench you can see that I have the Mountune exhaust tips from the V3 exhaust from the Focus RS. The reason why I have them here is that I don't run these over the winter anymore, and that is because of just like salt on the roads and things like that, and I want to avoid these from like degrading. If you look super duper closely, I don't know how easy it is to see on camera, but there is some pitting that has started to occur around here that I noticed last winter. So essentially now whenever winter comes, I take these off, I get them all nice and cleaned up and essentially just store them until the springtime. But it kind of leads into a couple of other issues that I have and a proposed solution that I have with regards to the exhaust tips from Mountune. We talk about pitting, that is an unfortunate sort of corrosion thing. Like once you lose bits of the metal, you can't really, get it back. That sort of extends into the clamps that Mountune provide. The clamps themselves, to do these V-bands, the V-band clamps, they're okay quality, but the nuts to secure them are not. I've got one here actually. Hopefully, well, it's pretty easy to see that that is rusted like crazy. Essentially, the clamps are just, proper stainless steel, as is the rest of this stuff, but these nuts seem to be mild steel, and for all the pennies that would cost Mountune to give proper nuts, it seems kind of crazy. So, I mean, I have got some replacement clamps here. Here's an example, comes with proper stainless steel nuts. But yeah, I mean, it just seems kind of crazy that Mountune would cheap out on something as inexpensive as nuts. I mean, you can get replacement nuts if you can get the right thread pitch and all that kind of stuff, but that's kind of an annoying thing to do. You can get an entire, like, slightly even chunkier clamp with proper nuts for about, I don't know, like a tenner or something, not much money. So I have replaced all of my clamps on the exhaust, which, you shouldn't have to do for such an expensive exhaust, but it is what it is. The clamps and the nuts aren't what I am here to really talk about today in this update video. It's really about the tips and specifically around the V-band connections. So yes, the fact that Mountune chose to connect the tips with V-bands, it's a little bit annoying in terms of things like this pitting that's happening. If you damage your tips, if you lose a tip, if someone comes along and steals one of your exhaust tips, Mountune will not sell an individual tip for you to replace it with. I asked them a while ago and they literally just said no. The only way you can get more tips is to buy an entire brand new exhaust system, which obviously is kind of a bit, inconvenient and very expensive. So you'd think, okay, well, I'll just go and buy some tips from a different manufacturer and put them on, but the V-bands make that a very difficult prospect because Mountune, as far as I know, is one of very few, if not the only, exhaust manufacturer, provider, whatever, who is using V-bands for the exhaust tips. Most other companies have like slip joints, and you can just go and buy different tips. They even like sell a range of different tips if you want to change, like even just the aesthetic, to a different look of tip. They'll sell you whatever you want. Mountune, not so much. So companies like Miltech and Remus, all these big exhaust companies are very happy for you to change your tips and provide that option. But yeah, that kind of leads to a bit of a problem. Like I say, if you lose a tip, or if, maybe you have like a bit of a fender bender or something, and, one of your tips gets mangled and you just need to replace a tip, Mountune just say no, which is really annoying. So I have come up with a solution that I have just started to gather the bits for, but I haven't actually done it yet. So I'll explain what that is. essentially, if you look at this tip, what we have is we have the tip itself, then we have a V-band flange and a little bit of pipe here, and that is welded onto the tip. So essentially, my solution, my idea is to fabricate up this section with a bit more that would essentially be like a V-band exhaust tip, Mountune exhaust tip adapter that would then allow a third party, another company's exhaust tip to slide on and be used with the rest of the Mountune exhaust system. So that is what I have been gathering. So I have got the appropriately sized V-band flanges. All of this is stainless steel, of course. I have the appropriately sized stainless steel pipe. Obviously, that's a lot longer than I actually need, but I want to get longer so that I could then cut it down to the exact size that I want it afterwards, instead of trying to, you know, figure out what size I might need and then have it not be right, etc., etc. So essentially, this is going to slot in here, like so. Then around the edge here, I will weld this up. Then once this has been welded up, like I say, I will cut it to size, and then I will grab a third-party tip, such as this Miltech titanium tip, which is awesome. It's super duper light, looks really cool, like burnt titanium. And as you can see, then this will slide on like that, and then just a regular clamp on like that. So this is essentially the solution, except of course that it will be a little bit shorter, and that will allow me to then, if I want to, swap out these tips. I can grab, you know, like some other stainless ones that look kind of like the Mountunes, or I could grab like some carbon ones. Whatever I want or need to do, I will be able to do it. So that is the simple, but what I think will be effective solution to fabricate some adapters. So yeah, that will be cool. I do have all of the stuff, I think, to do it. I just need to take the time and actually get down and do it. So yeah, that will be pretty cool. On to the next thing then, which is a center console interior mod. A mod of all the plastics for the center console, just to make them look that bit nicer, as you can see in this nice, shiny, what is actually quite a sparkly black. Obviously, as you can see, I have completed the process, but here is the process. I did have the camera when I was doing it, so I will run through the process of getting all these plastics to look as awesome as this. Alright, I'm starting off here. I have all the pieces laid out, so you can see there is the sort of bit that everything clicks into of the center console. We have this bit, which is the piece of trim that like sort of goes here and connects this part to the upper part. We then have the main bezel, the bit that goes around the outside of this, and then we have this. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this. I may well just use what is in the car already, because in the RS we get a metal one of these. This is obviously just plastic, but I figure it's only a small piece, it won't use up much resource, so I will just do it the same as the rest of these parts right now while I am at it. I got all of these parts really cheap from eBay, from breakers. They are spot on. They're just maybe a bit scuffed up. So like this bit, you can see it's not even black already. It's as the other bits are. It was originally a silvery color. I have given everything a bit of a sand down. There are a couple of nicks down in this bit especially. You can see I rubbed it down, rubbed some of this like silvery finish off, but it's all been rubbed down. It's all been cleaned off then, the dustiness, with some IPA, isopropyl alcohol, and now we are nice and ready to get this primed. So I am going to be priming this using some Touch-Up Paint Factory primer, and this is it right here, the 1K epoxy primer. I've just found that all these spray cans from Touch-Up Paint Factory are just of an amazing quality. I really love them, and it's not just the quality of the construction, the quality of the paints, and obviously primer in this case, but the spray pattern is like a flat blade as opposed to most spray cans, which are like circular. You can have a circular one if you want. They provide that different nozzle if you want it, but I like to just use the one, you can see I've been using this. It's like flat. It's probably, you probably can't see that on camera. The spray pattern is very much like what you would get from a professional spray gun, which is very, very cool indeed. But yeah, this is what we're going to use. Going to do a couple of coats of this, and then I'll leave it overnight, and then we'll flatten it down with some sandpaper, and then we'll be ready to paint. Alright, after the primer was dry then, I went over and did a really light buff with some 600 grit sandpaper. Touch Up Paint Factory does suggest 400 to 500 grit. I use 600, just prefer it. But yeah, basically just really light rubbing until it feels nice and smooth as opposed to feeling like bumpy or rough or anything. So yeah, all these parts are now ready to go with paint. In terms of what paint I'm going to use, I was originally going to use just a plain black, but I was in Halfords the other day randomly, and it kind of came to me that maybe I could, you know, get something that would have a bit of metallic flake in there, which would just sort of elevate and make it look that bit cooler. If you're familiar with Halfords, they typically have a whole section of like actual automotive color matched paints. So I lifted one that was black and metallic, so this black sapphire BMW one. So the Halfords paints tend to be very nice quality as well, so I'm going to use this for my color coats. I'll do maybe 3 layers, and once that is done I will move on to the lacquer. Alright, I have wiped down all of the surfaces just to get rid of any dust that may have been present. So we're ready to go. As you can see, I've propped up that bezel piece just so that I can get in and around the bottom edges and stuff a bit better. It's not really an issue with these other bits, but I just needed to prop this up just to get better coverage. So yeah, ready to spray. Alright, nice. So now I will leave that for a good 10 to 15 minutes and then come and do another layer. Right, for the clear coat, I'm using this, the Touch Up Paint Factory 1K clear coat. Normally I would use the Touch Up Paint Factory 2K clear coat, the one that has like the separate activator, they have to twist the wee thing in the bottom, just because that is the closest thing to a factory exterior clear lacquer. But because these parts are for the inside of the car, that aspect is less important to me. The 1K clear coat is still very, very good. It's pre-mixed, you just have to shake it up and go as you would with your color coat, and it is of course a bit more inexpensive. And for the purposes of these interior parts, it is more than sufficient. I don't need to waste any of my good 2K clear coat, which I do have some over in the shelf, but I might as well use this since I have it, and it will do an excellent job. I'm going to wait a bit of extra time for the last color coat to dry a bit more. I'd say at least half an hour, as opposed to the normal sort of 10 to 15 minutes between coats, and then I will just repeat this sort of exact same process that I did for the color coat, at least a good 3 light coats of this, and then we should be good to go. Alright, that is all of the layers of clear coat done. That's actually all of the spraying done. So now it's just a waiting game. Have to just wait for this to dry, harden, cure, whatever. And yeah, just don't touch it for a bunch of time, and then we'll come back and we'll see how it has done. Alright then, I waited a couple of days for everything to dry nicely, and then I gave everything a fairly quick polish. I didn't really go like super hardcore, certainly didn't need to use any sandpaper. That Touch Up Paint Factory 1K clear coat really does leave a nice smooth even finish, so you know it's not like super duper orange peely that requires sanding first before polishing. To do my very light correction and finishing, I used this, the Hybrid Solutions Pro Precision Platelet One and Done Compound Correct and Finish, just because it's an absolutely awesome product. I mean, it's definitely the best all-in-one I've ever used, and I might even go as far as saying it's the best compound I've ever used, and indeed the best polish I've ever used, so really highly recommend this. So everything is looking real nice. I left it a good 24 hours. That's actually probably a bit more, just because I had some things to do, and so at this point I'm going to just essentially just leave it sitting here, because I want to let the clear coat fully degas, fully harden before I apply coatings and then install into the car. I'm not going to be doing this for a little while anyway. Let's see if I can like get an angle of the metal flake here. Hopefully you can see the metal flake in there just shining off the lights in my garage. It just looks super duper nice. It's
I'm not sure how well it comes across on camera, but in person it looks really, really cool. Obviously it's, you know, black, but it just adds that little bit of extra, sort of like an extra elevation of the paint. So I'm very happy with these parts, and as I say, I'm just going to let them sit now. I'll probably leave them, I mean, it's probably going to be at least a good couple of weeks, maybe more, and then I'll just coat once I am ready to install.
Well, there we go then. That is the latest garage update video. Some doing of bits, some planning of bits, and yeah, I am very excited to get those things done and installed and to show you the result. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe for more content to come very, very soon. Thank you once again. Goodbye.